Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of I'm in the Shop. I'm Lee Martin from Connex. Today we're talking about the Yeti Snow MX Spindle. So let's get to it.
Go put that there.
This is a 2022 Spindle we have on here. There's been a few different versions of the Spindle, but to start with, what I'm going to talk about is pretty much the exact same service you do on any model of Yeti Snow MX Spindle up until 2024 that I'm aware of. So what we're talking about is servicing the bushings that are in the bottom of the spindle that mount onto your ski. We'll also talk about servicing the bolt, the nut, and what the effect is if this isn't serviced or it doesn't work right. The spindle marries up with the ski. Okay, it fits in like so, and then the ski has the side brackets, and then of course you basically on what most people would think is just the bolt goes through, tightens up, and all's good in the world. When you put the bolt through the spindle in the bottom of the ski, you want to make sure it's torqued and it's tight. If you don't, you can get sideways play like so out of the ski and the spindle. And when you're riding, whether it's powder or hard packed, it feels like you're unstable, like there's something loose, which it is. So in order to keep all this tight feeling, what you're going to need is make sure that your bolt is tight, your nut is properly torqued, your sleeves are in good shape, your collar on the inside. So let's break it all down and have a look. So here's our bolt. Okay, pretty simple, right? The way that this bolt works is, it's not so much the bolt. I mean, the bolt is just it's a titanium bolt, lightweight, cool Yeti stuff. But it's the nut on the other side. So the nut is a special locking nut. I don't know exactly what they call this in the industry, but it has a couple of steel tabs on either side. And when you tighten this on, it grabs the threads of the bolt and then it locks it into place. Because there's a lot of vibration, there's a lot of banging around down there. If this gets loose, chances are it needs to be replaced. So I always keep 2 or 3 or 4 of them in stock. And God forbid you lost it on the trail, right? But highly unlikely. I've yet to do that. But I have seen the metal locking on the side kind of let go. So making sure that the nut is locking, it'll thread on all the way to the end, and then all of a sudden I feel like it won't go any further, like you can't roll it on. That's normal. You need the tools to do that. It's those metal tabs binding into the threads and locking it. So that's pretty much it with the bolt and the nut. When it comes to the main block down here in the spindle, what you may not realize back home is inside of this, there are a couple of nylon bushings, and they look like this. Okay, there's been a bunch of different renditions of this throughout the years. Yours might be white. It could be worn out and looking black, like this one does. But most of them are tan, and most of them are, if you notice real closely, they're tapered. So on the one end it's a sharp edge, on the other end it's tapered. That tapered end, okay, is there for getting it inside the block at the bottom, and so that it'll slide in. The tolerances are really, really tight. I actually need, what I usually do is when I put these in, I'll need to get it started with like a block of wood or a soft mallet hammer, something that won't damage the sleeve, to get it to start. Once it's kind of sitting in there, I'll lay the spindle down and hammer it in. We'll show you how it's going to happen in this episode as well. So you should have 2 of these inside the lower block here in your spindle. So if we pull up the screen here, here's the exploded view of the block in the bottom of the spindle. Okay, so there's your main collar, and then here are those 2 sleeves on either side. Okay, So basically one of these sleeves sits in this side of the block. That sleeve sits in this side of the block. Then what we're going to talk about next is the outer bushing caps and what they look like. So this is what one looks like when it's pretty fresh and new. You've got this convenient lip, and then these will fit on the outside, and then you want to marry up the outside of the collar with the side of the block. When I was servicing this, what came out of the sides was these things, these destroyed collars, and they do get destroyed. The more times you take the ski on and off the spindle, and cold weather and all the rest of the elements out there, they're going to start breaking. So when you order replacement collars from Yeti, the internal ones not so much. They're pretty protected. But the exterior ones, I would probably order, like, for the price of them, 6 pairs or something like that. I think that would be convenient. This one's also cracked on me. So these worn out bushings will definitely result in ski play between the spindle, no matter how much you tighten it up. So you kind of want to be, gingerly with these, and because they do play a great role with stability of the ski. So there's a couple different versions too, depending on whatever they got in stock and what they're going to send you. They had some longer ones at one point and some shorter ones. Either ones are going to work fine. Just with the longer ones, you're going to want to make sure that you have the space on the end of your block and your internal collar so that can seat in flat. Let's get to installing these. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of lube. If you've got some, just even something slick like a little bit of WD-40 or something, just to help it slide in there, that'll go a long way. So I already have a collar on one side of this block, and it's sitting right in here. And I'm going to install this other one into this side. Before I put this in, I should probably show you. So here's the sleeve, right? So that's this part right here. Okay. So that sleeve fits inside of the, or this collar, sorry, fits inside of these sleeves, like so. So it's important that they've got good clearances and it floats and it's free. What you don't want is something that, here, like this. So here's a brand new collar, and here's a used one. And you can just see where it's been resting inside there, against those plastic sleeves inside. So, I mean, just by the marks, it's telling me, hey, this is utilizing those sleeves. It's pretty important. You definitely just don't want to take the collar and throw it into the bottom of your block without those sleeves in place. You're just going to do you're going to wind up damaging your blocks. You're going to wind up damaging the sleeve and maybe even damaging other parts. And then, of course, your bolt goes through that sleeve. And everything is, Yeti does a great job with their machine work. The tolerances are really tight. It's really nice. So when things don't line up or you got things that are bent, it makes it a little bit tougher to put things together. So it's always good to have nice, fresh, new stuff. Before we can put the replacement sleeve in, we actually have to pound it in from this side. So we're going to take the blocks off so that we can get the sleeve going the right side. If we go into this side, we'll never get it in deep enough to put it into place. So really, the spacer needs to sit about there. Okay? As you can see, all this blue, there's Loctite in there. So when you get this apart, you may want to run the bolts in and out a couple times and break all that old Loctite out of there. You will need Loctite back in those when they're ready to go in. Okay, now we have the block out, like so, right? Now there's also a set of internal bolts that you can't see when it's sitting in the main spindle. So we got to get those loosened up and out so we can spread this apart. You'll probably have to put it in a vise. We'll be right back. Okay, now we can separate the spindle, or the block from the spindle block at the bottom. Okay, and there we go. There we have it. So there's our other bushing that was in there. And I'm just inspecting it, and besides a little bit of grime, we're looking pretty good. We're going to be installing the sleeve from the inside out. So in other words, if this is the outside of the ski right here, or the spindle, like so, okay, we do not want to hammer it in this direction. We want to go from the inside and hammer it in that way. That's why we split these. So we've got the collar edge, tiny bit of lube. I'm just going to use a little bit of WD-40 just to give it a hand getting in there. Line it up. And if you can get it in with your thumb, that's awesome, but good luck. It's pretty tricky. So a soft rubber mallet, and being really ginger with this, guys, it can break quite easily. There we go. You'll feel it. It'll just go like, it'll just knock down. Then once you got it, just if you can't get it straight, you may want to get a block of wood, and we'll just try to gently tap around until it's flush. You could probably put it in a vise and squeeze it if you wanted to, but again, you just can tap it in. Okay, for that last little bit, we don't necessarily have to tap it in all the way and get it flush. It'll just sit in nicely here with the space, with the block spacer. And then we just reinstall the other side. And now we've replaced the inside bushing inside your spindle block at the bottom, so that your collar will fit in there nice and tight with no play and give you maximum ski control. This should slide in and out and through, guys. Okay, if it's sticky like the old one is, like I can't get it through, it's probably because I've got a bird edge, or it mushroomed. Maybe it got tightened up too much and it mushroomed the collar. If you can't straighten it out or get it in nicely, it's time to replace it. We're going to run these bolts in and out a couple times to get the old thread locker burned off it, and then we'll put some brand new blue thread Loctite on there. It doesn't take a lot, guys, just a little bit. Just a couple drops, rotate it around. Make sure that the threads are fully covered, and then we'll get that in there. On the Yeti page, they show you exactly right on the fiches here, or what they used to call fiches, the parts diagram, how many Newton meters each bolt is. So these bolts that I just tightened up, they're 30 Newton meters. Okay, there's one. And there's two. I'm now going to install my replacement outer bushings. A little bit of cleanup on the outside doesn't hurt. Okay, and then again, just to help it out a little bit, just a tiny bit of lube on there, guys. Okay. Try to get it started with your thumbs. There, kind of heard that. I'm just going to use this tiny hammer and just work it back and forth. Like so. She's beaut. Look at that. Nice, brand new, replaced. That'll fit into the ski well and hold it nice and tight. Do the other side. Okay, and now the bottom of our spindle block is rebuilt. We can install it back into the spindle, and then we'll marry it up to the ski and life will be good. Sometimes you just need to keep things loose, just to rock things into place. All right, we're going to figure out the torque spec on those. 30 Newton meters as well. And then the little lock symbol basically says Loctite or a thread locker. They will tell you what type of thread locker in the beginning of your manual, but it is always pretty much on parts like this, blue Loctite. The Loctite kind of keeps them in place. You probably want to let this, if you can do this service the day before you go riding, probably best. Let that Loctite solidify and you know, grasp the threads and hold it in place. That's complete. Let's clean off the bench, bring the ski out, and we'll talk about getting it into the ski. If you didn't see in our other episode that we released before this one about having to service your ski with the Skag, check that video out. So this one's been serviced already. And we have our rubber and our block and everything's in place. So this should drop and slide in. It should be, you know, not super tight, but snug. Okay, and then again, we have to first do, before we do that, we got to put our collar in, guys. So the collar just sits in there nicely. That's exactly how it should slide in. That's nice and tight. It's got really good support. Like so. Okay, and then if you're using your old bolt, cool, you know, or a new one, whatever, I would definitely put a little bit of grease on there, just a tiny little bit. We'll do it once we start building the bike, but it'll just help it, you know, if we're taking it apart, and it'll help with any type of corrosion. Not that, you know, you're going to get a lot of corrosion between nylon and titanium, but again, like you're going down the roads, there's dirt, there's salt, there's sand, there's whatever it is you're running off your snow bike in and out of the truck, just gets in there. Just how it is. Sometimes she needs a bit of help, like so. And then our replacement nut. Now we talked about in the episode when we were removing the ski, how it's really hard to get a socket on here, if not impossible. So you definitely want to get the right size wrench to hold that nut in place. And the majority of the torquing and the tightening will happen on the other side where you have a smaller head bolt and it's easier to get a socket on there. Oh, yeah. 55 Newton meters. There's no Loctite involved because that, like I said, that bolt is the locking bolt, guys. So we'll just, you may want to have someone help you out here holding this in place. Can't do it yourself. There we go. And we have a nice tight mounted spindle onto our ski. Perfect. So there's your service for the bottom end. Before we finish this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the top end here, where your clamps hold onto your forks. And the only thing that I have found serviceable on these parts is one day, a little story for you. One day I was snow biking and I hit a big rock hidden underneath the snow. I hit it so hard it threw me off the bars and wound up knocking me out. It was a big ordeal. But once I kind of got to and I checked my ski and I noticed it was all in one piece, and I was thankful for that. And you know, maybe a little bit of a crease, but I'm still using the ski. It's fine. And when I got on hard pack, it wouldn't ride straight. Like it just it was tweaked. And I thought, oh, you know, maybe I tweaked my forks. So I loosened my forks off and put them back and lined everything up, and I said, no, it's still off. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And everything seems fine until I decided to take the ski right off the bike. Now, I've since then thrown out the bolts. I didn't keep them. But the really cool design of this, and when I was talking back in the day with Camso, when they had this new spindle design, you know, there was guys that were having issues where they were breaking the bottom of fork tubes, or sometimes even breaking the carbon fiber plates that they were using at the time, back then. And what they did is, when they did the structural design of this, they made it so that the weakest point would be the bolts themselves. So when I started backing out the bolt from the top of the fork mount on the spindle here, I noticed it was kind of oblong, like it was like when I was rolling it out. It wasn't a perfectly smooth out. And what happened was the bolt had bent. And so it was a bit oblong. And that was the only problem with the entire system after hitting that rock so hard, where it was like, yeah, proper hard. Like I thought when I came to, I definitely would have broken something. And all it did was bend these bolts, which is the weaker part. Still a strong bolt, but it's not like it's hardened or anything. And I simply just ordered a couple new bolts, put them in. They went in straight instead of, oopie ball, instead of oblong. And everything married right up perfectly, and I was skiing down the trail in a nice straight line. So yeah, that you want to check your bolts, guys. If you're taking some big hits, back your bolts out and just make sure they're straight and true. Anything, you can roll them on a piece of glass. In this case, I hit them so much I could just see it. When I was threading it in, instead of the drill just going straight like that, it was going, see if I can if I can copy that. It was like when I was putting it in. So yeah, guys, that's it. I think all these bolts are supposed to be Loctited in. They should be fine. When you do put your when you put this back on your bike, let's just double check here, see what Yeti says. So they expect you to put your fork clamps bolts on by 30 Newton meters, which again, that was that 22 foot-pounds of torque, or roughly around there, and using blue thread locker. Okay, they don't want you over tightening those guys. They don't want you doing damage to your forks. You got an impact gun on the end of that thing and just hammered it on, probably going to crimp your forks. You probably won't get it even. So much like when you're tightening up your axle bolts on your front of your forks for your bike, you can kind of go back and forth between the two of them, like click, and then all of a sudden, oh, that needs a bit more, and then oh, and then click, 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 click. They're even. That's what you want. You want them even on either side. The even amount of gap on either side of this in here, right? What you don't want is, you don't want a big gap on this side and a tiny gap on that side. You want them to both evenly crush down onto the forks. Okay? That is it for this episode. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the trails.